Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about some of my favorite food books. And this might be a 2 or 3 part series because I have a lot of books that I want to talk about. But let's get going today about talking with them. If you like what you're seeing, make sure that you give me a thumbs up. Definitely let me know in the comments what books that you love and if you've read any that I'm talking about. And subscribe to the channel if you like it. So let's get going. The first one is Insatiable by Gail Green. And Gail Green was I always mess up which magazine she worked for. She was the restaurant critic for the New York Magazine for many years. And in this, she tells basically the story of her kind of how she grew up in the scene and how she became a food critic. And it's so funny and it's so fascinating, all about the restaurant scene and everything that she saw behind the scenes, basically, and a lot about her and her life. And I just really loved this book. I just thought it was this over the top, really incredible book, which is why it's titled Tales from a Life of Delicious Excess, as the subtitle for Insatiable. I also remember very specifically the story that she talked about when she first met Elvis. And it's kind of a crazy story, so you should read the book to find out about it. Next is a fan favorite, Chocolat by Joanne Harris, who is actually on the same publisher as I am. And this is such a gorgeous book in many ways. Many of you have only ever seen the movie, which didn't have Johnny Depp in it. God, it was so long ago. And now I feel so weird about Johnny Depp. But at any rate, Chocolat is just this beautifully written book. It's basically this beautiful unmarried woman who ends up in this French town, and basically how she falls in love in a really interesting way. And it's there's a chocolate store in the heart of the book, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful novel. I don't know. You have to read it. Chocolat. Okay. Next, Aphrodite by Isabelle Allende. And this is, and I love the picture on the back of basically it's her. And she's like, she's being Aphrodite. So I love this because it's basically a memoir, but it's a memoir of her love of food and her love of, she has a whole chapter on cheese. But there's these really gorgeous paintings and art that's in here, and she just talks about her life growing up and how what food has meant to her and the senses of it. There's all sorts of recipes that are thrown throughout the book, and I mean it's just this beautiful, beautiful book. I really love Isabelle Allende, but I think this is probably my favorite book of hers. And I think it's one that I don't hear a lot of people talking about. So Aphrodite, you should pick it up, Isabelle Allende. The Lost Family. So Jenna Blum, you might know her from her book, Those Who Save Us, and which is a book about World War II. This is also a book sort of about World War II, but it's really about a Holocaust survivor who ends up in New York City and trying to make a life for himself after some really horrific events during the war. And he, I have a little card from Jenna inside. And basically it's in the 60s in Manhattan, and it's all about this restaurant and how he falls in love with a model, this chef that's working in this restaurant. He owns this restaurant, and how he falls in love with this model and the interesting relationship they have. And it's just a gorgeous book. It's full of food, and it's really about the struggles of family, especially when there's a lot of secrets in the past in that family, and when you're struggling with really traumatic things that are underlying in that family dynamic. So Lost Family, Jenna Blum. Oh my gosh, I have so many books here. The Nasty Bits, Bourdain. He has so many great books. This is just one of them that I happen to have in hard copy. I was really heartbroken when he passed. He was somebody who was super influential for me. And one of the things I remember about Bourdain is that he was talking about and I don't remember where because I think he said it multiple times, but about how when he was on one of the episodes oh gosh, this is where my poor old lady brain, in one of the No Reservations, the show, when he was on it and he was in Russia and he had a meal with a diplomat there who was later assassinated about a month later. And that really shook him. And he was saying that and apparently after that, many more, basically some of the feelings about no more reservations, it became a lot more political, or there was a lot more conversation about politics in relation to food. And his response was, politics is food. You can't separate the two. And I think that's so true. It's tied up in like how we have farm subsidies and GMO and the rules that we have governing our food. And I don't know. So it really resonated with me because I have believed that for a long time. But he's just also an incredible writer. He's funny and interesting, and you need to pick up everything by Bourdain. Appetite by Philip Kazan. And this book is set actually during the same time frame, maybe a little bit before. It's about 100 years before, actually. Okay, so not the same time frame, but in the Renaissance. So there is that. So this is also set in Florence, but it's this book about basically this orphan who ends up being taken in by a chef. And he also is in love with a woman, and that love doesn't really go well, but maybe it does. But the really cool thing about it is that this kid has this amazing sense of taste and smell, and how it infuses into everything that he does and how he thinks. And I really loved the book for the sensual way that Kazan talks about food. It's just this incredible book. If you are a food lover, this should definitely be on the top of your food book list. Okay. There's so many. Jesse Browner. The Uncertain Hour. So Jesse Browner is a food historian and a journalist. And this is a book that he wrote about Petronius and his last hour of life. And so basically, Titus Petronius. And it takes place in AD 66. And Petronius wrote the Satyricon, which is considered to be one of the very first novels. And I highly recommend you read the Satyricon, actually. And there's a lot of food in that, too. It is a crazy book. It is just this bizarre, insane romp through ancient Rome, and but a lot of it was considered to be satire of Nero's his emperorship. Oh, by the way, you can't see here, but I have a little kitty, Mr. Merlin. He comes and hangs out with me like every video, and Nero is like over there, and I can't turn it. I can't turn it, otherwise he will everything will fall apart. Anyway, but what's really cool about the Uncertain Hour is that he really talks about how Petronius Petronius was forced by Nero to kill himself. And so this book is all about this last meal that he prepares with his friends. And he's killing himself through the whole meal. He's slowly bleeding himself. And it's all about his musings about his life. And there's so much food. And it's just this really fascinating book about what might have been those last hours for Petronius, because he was asked to kill himself by Nero, who thought that his writings were too not satirical enough, I guess. Or he didn't like how he was being portrayed, the implications of being included in the Satyricon in a satirical sort of way. This book, Feast by Roy Strong, is the book that changed my life. I read a line in it. This is probably the line. This is probably it here, maybe on... Yep, this is it. On page 24, 25, I read a line about how Apicius died. And I decided I'm going to have to write about that guy. And so this book started me on that path. But this book is just all about feasts. It's nonfiction. It's basically feasts throughout time and all of the crazy banquets that took place. It's a really incredibly interesting book. If you love nonfiction, you want to read about food, that's a great one. One of my absolute favorites is MFK Fisher, The Art of Eating. I'm getting piles of books here. This is actually several books pushed into place. I can't remember how many there are off the top of my head. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's 5 books in here. And so if you're not familiar with MFK Fisher, she really is the one that started the popularity of food writing. And she wrote for many, many years in all sorts of places. I think she was also a New Yorker writer. My poor memory is not as good as it used to be, but there's just incredibly beautiful passages in here about food. She talks about her life in France and basically what food has meant to her. And just the way that she talks about food is really fascinating and beautiful. This is also nonfiction, but gorgeous food writing. Some of the best food writing you'll probably ever come across. MFK Fisher, The Art of Eating. This should be like your Bible if you're a food writing lover. All right. The Physiology of Taste, on Meditations on Transcendental Gastronomy. Jean-Anselme Brillat-Savarin. Like, my French is so bad now. I minored in it years ago, but I've been learning Italian ever since. And so it's just all out the window for me. So this, and there's actually a cheese named after this guy, which is pretty incredible. I have a little bit of dust on it. Gosh, I need to dust more. So basically, Brillat-Savarin, he was, this was basically in the 1700s, and he really just has this whole bunch of meditations on food and health and basically what gastronomy was in that time frame. And he just talks, like, there's these, I mean, just looking through this is so fascinating. So he talks about like how much money here's one section where he talks about what you can afford if your presumed income is 5,000 francs, mediocrity. A big fillet of veal larded with fat bacon and cooked in its own juices, a domestic turkey stuffed with lion's chestnuts, fattened pigeons covered with bacon and well cooked, eggs à la Liège, a dish of sauerkraut, bristling with sausages and crowned with smoked bacon from Strasbourg. Comment: say now, that looks damn good. Come on, let's do it justice. And then if you have 15,000 francs, you can do a lot more. If you have 30,000 francs wealth, then you could have a 7-pound fowl stuffed round as a ball with Perigord truffles, an enormous pâté de foie gras from Strasbourg in the shape of a bastion, a large carp from the Rhine à la Chambord, richly dressed and decorated, truffled quails à la moelle on canapés of toast spread with butter flavored with sweet basil, 24 ortolans à Provençal, following the recipe given in the Secretary and the Cook, and it just keeps going. But there's so much like fun stuff. This is a fun food book, even though it was written in the 1700s. Definitely grab it. And then there's 2 more, and then I'm going to be done. This is a lot of food books. Believe me, I have lots more I could talk about. These are ones I actually have physical copies for. Günter Grass, The Flounder. This is one of my favorite food books too. This is a weird book, weird, crazy book. And basically, this is a book that for his 50th birthday, Günter Grass decided that he was going to write it himself. He wanted to write a book for himself. And this was the book he wrote. And basically, it's about a flounder and a fisherman. And they're both immortal, and they go through time. And the fisherman always ends up with these cooks who are women. And they're very strong women who basically kind of rule the roost in all sorts of ways. And oftentimes they are rulers. And it's this, and the flounder allows himself to be caught. And there's this whole like thread of the idea of what male chauvinism is that kind of underlies it all. But the idea that women really run things is definitely at the heart of this. But there's so much food. I think I play a game with this. Every time I flip to a page, can I find a page that doesn't have food on it? And let's see here. I'm on page 164. And whoa, maybe I found a page with no food on it. No way. I think I usually do within 2 pages. Let's see here. Oh my gosh, I think I might have like totally broken it. I found some 2 pages that have no food. That is not ever happened to me. And I play this game a lot. All right, I'm going to flip one more time. 194 or 195. Nope, didn't do it. Regardless of whom she cooked for, her table talk was thrown in, a subliminal mumbling with subplots as intricate as the politics of her time. And so when the abbess Marguerite Rouche served up the last dish of tripe to her father and his guests, her tongue wagged as usual. And then the next page, definitely there's food there. Like I'll flip to another one. There were once 47 lambs, which along with 863 sheep and innumerable other lambkins grazed on the Charpoux. And then it talks about like cooking the lambs. Yeah, so like I play this game all the time. That has never happened. So it's just because I'm on video with you guys. And then one of the final ones that I'm going to talk about today is the Dolly cookbook. And this is called Le Dîner de Gala. And basically it's an art book, and it was published for the first time it was only published once in 1972, and then a few years ago it was republished. So you can see there's lots and lots of photos. This is like a potential place where you would dine. There's recipes that he was known for his crazy dinners, lavish, insane, like artistic dinners. And here's some more art plus some of the actual food. And so he describes these insane, like crazy, like dinners. And the book is just gorgeous and beautiful. And it's not, I don't think there's a lot of copies in the world these days. So it'll probably go up pretty quickly, I think. It's been in print. The reprint has happened for a couple of years, but like Eels and Beer. There's bush of crayfish and Viking crabs. This is like crazy. Don't you want to do that for a party someday? Marinated fillets of gilt head. I mean, come on. You want to do it like Dolly did. I want to do it like Dolly did. Stuffed rabbit with red wine, quails with corn, stuffed cabbages with pigeon. These like, oh, just insane. So, okay, so there it is. Le Dîner de Gala. And he also has a wine book, which I've ordered and I'm waiting for it to arrive. And so there you have it. Some of my favorite food books. I'll probably do a part 2 and maybe a part 3 at some point. I'm definitely going to do one about my favorite cookbooks. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, give it a like, give it a big thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for more cool stuff on food history and cookbooks and things like that. If you are interested, I also have a food book. It's this pretty one here, The Chef's Secret. And it was a total labor of love. It's about a Renaissance chef to several popes, Bartolomeo Scapi. And so you can give that a look too. And thanks for joining me. And leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. And let me know what food books you've loved. Ciao.